Hello, and welcome to the first episode in our new series of Royal London's informative pensions and protection podcasts. Listen to subject matter experts discuss the challenges advisors face and the support available to help them grow their business and deliver client value. In this episode, we'll explore workplace pensions through an advisor, employer, and customer lens. We know the new tax year is a key part of the financial calendar, so we're firmly focused on understanding and exploring the opportunities in the workplace market for advisors. Hello and welcome to this episode. I'm Kimberly Dondo, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Rory Marsh, Customer Life Stage Director at Royal London. Thank you for joining me today, Rory.
Great to be here. Hi, Kimberly. Thank you.
So before we kind of get started into the main part of this episode, could you give us a bit of background into yourself and how you got started in the industry?
Sure. Thank you. So I'm from Edinburgh, and there's various versions of the joke that say if you're from Edinburgh, there's a good chance you work in financial services and in our sector in particular. And I'm no different. So I've been in the sector for about 15 years, worked for a couple of different pension providers in that time, currently at Royal London and enjoying the role.
Yeah, fantastic. So we are going to be covering a lot of things based on workplace pensions and advisors and employers and through the customer lens as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about customers and what financial planning decisions they might be considering in the new tax year.
Yeah, great. So I'm sure Kimberly, like me and a number of other people listening, I'm sure sort of taking a deep breath and recovering from the tax year end we've just had. I think it may have been our busiest yet. But the good news is we've got more ways that we can help in the new tax year, of course. And, it remains a really valuable time to make really good decisions with your finances. And what's really encouraging from our perspective, our internal insights here at Royal London is that whilst customer interest and their engagement with their finances really peaks towards tax year end, that paying of attention really does continue into the new tax year through April, May into early June in particular. So we think this remains a really good window for advisors, employers, pension providers like ourselves to get in there and really provide really good guidance and support around people's financial resilience needs, whether that's protecting their family, helping them withstand future financial shocks, saving for their long-term retirement, or just making the most of the benefits that they have from their employer. Now, whilst I say people are paying attention, as I'm sure you agree, it's a really rare and highly prized commodity to have that attention. We know in today's busy world, there's a lot of competition for people's attention. There's always a more interesting TikTok video or Twitter spat to follow than maybe sit down and think about your long-term financial planning needs. So
definitely,
when we have that precious attention, we've got to use it. And what that means is we can't just speak to them and pat ourselves on the back. We've got to encourage people to take action. So we've been giving a lot of thought to the best ways to do that. And what we find is increasingly using digital channels, things like the mobile app that we and a number of others have is a great way, a route in to turn that attention into action. So when we kicked off our tax year end activity at the beginning of this year, we had our largest ever month for new app downloads. We also had our highest ever day for logins, because that's one of the main ways people like to engage these days with their finances. And that's great because through our research, we know that people that use the mobile app are more likely to take action, and then also more likely to build up their financial confidence. In terms of what those actions are, we know, and maybe stating the obvious, but we know in the lead up to tax year end, a lot of it's about customers making single contributions. And just to give you a sense of the kind of shape that we experience of those contributions, in that final week before tax year end, we see 8 times the volume compared to a typical week throughout the year. Now that we're into the new tax year, a lot of customer focus and therefore our focus shifts to how we help people make sure that they've got the right regular contributions for their long-term retirement needs. We really see a peak of people changing their contributions in April and May into a little bit into early June. And that coincides most likely with when their employers are reviewing salaries and wages as well. So got to get people's attention when it's available, turn that into action. The other thing I'd call out, though, is we've got to be thoughtful about how different customer segments behave, the situation they're in, how they're impacted by the environment around them. So we know, for example, that younger savers typically are less informed when it comes to long-term savings. So from our research, we think about a quarter of 18 to 24-year-olds, for example, assume that their pension savings go into a bank account rather than being invested. If we look across customer segments, we know that about 40% of people haven't worked out what they need to save for their retirement, and a similar number haven't worked out what they might need to live on in retirement. So whilst I'm really excited about helping people make some quite sophisticated financial decisions, we've got to ground ourselves and make sure we're helping inform on the basics, particularly for customer segments that might need that help a little bit more. We also know that we're still in a cost of living challenging environment. We've been doing waves of research for a couple of years now. And what that shows is that whilst there are green shoots of recovery for most customer segments, feeling a little bit more resilient, a little bit more able to get on top of the cost of living, it's those in what we call our starting out life stage, 18 to 34-year-olds, who remain most exposed to some of the cost of living pressures. That said, there are some other interesting dynamics, though. We know that higher earners are not immune. So for those earning, for example, between £40,000 and £80,000 are more likely than the UK average earner to have taken out a payday loan, to have used a bank overdraft, or to put spending on a credit card to meet cost of living increases. So it's, and some of these are quite worrying insights into segments that you might not necessarily expect. And so we've got to be really tailored and thoughtful of how we engage different types of customers. But it's also not just about your age or your income bracket. I think we've also got to reflect on disparities by gender. Mm-hmm. We know from our own research, and plenty of others have been doing some fantastic research out there, that there is a significant gender pensions gap. The latest report from the Department of Work and Pensions showed that on average, women retire with 35% less in their pension than men. Now, there are a range of factors, of course, influencing this disparity, not least the gender pay gap, which means that, if you're not getting paid as much, you're not going to be able to contribute as much throughout your working life. But there are also some other fundamental challenges in there. We know that from our own research, typically women are less financially confident than men, particularly when it comes to their long-term savings, and they're also less likely to take up financial advice. So not pretending there's any quick fixes here, but I think there is a real call to action for all of us in the industry, whether that's advisors, employers, providers like ourselves, that we can help close this gap in savings and retirement outcomes. A lot of it starts with awareness building. There's, I think, some more tailored stuff that we can be doing to support financial education, support confidence building. There's more that we can be doing about providing the brilliant benefits that employers already offer that may not be maximized by employees, and making sure that we're encouraging the right contribution rates for those individuals as well.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated picture. I'm not pretending we've got all the answers, but I think as you start to get into thinking about different segments' needs, that's where you can be really impactful and getting people's attention, turning that into action.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And looking ahead at employer trends, we also know that post-tax year end provides a timely opportunity for employers to better support their colleagues. So what are these trends that we see?
Yeah, sure. So the good news from an employer point of view is we know that by and large employees really trust their employer, and that's one of their biggest sources of trust in terms of where they get their help and support around their long-term finances. From our research, we know that about 30% of employees would go first to their employer to get information about their pension, for example, and that's second only to going to their pension provider. But the challenge that we, of course, have, and we're still, unfortunately, in a cost of living environment, is that people's finances are strained, and that's a real source of anxiety for them. There was a really good Deloitte report earlier this year that said that 40% of Gen Z employees, Gen Z maybe if you're American, 35% of millennials say that they feel stressed either most of the time or all of the time, and frequently citing workplace factors contributing to this. Now that's obviously not good for the individuals concerned, and it's not good for the businesses either. We see a real impact on colleague productivity and absenteeism because of that financial pressure. So there is a big opportunity there for employers to realize the benefit for their employees and for them as a business if they can help with some of those financial resilience pressures that people are feeling. So we're increasingly having lots of conversations with employers who are really keen to improve their broader financial well-being offering, but oftentimes perhaps struggling with where to start or having the capacity or expertise to take it forward. So from our perspective, there's a really large and growing opportunity for businesses like ourselves, but also financial advisors to help plug that gap by offering high quality package of support around that financial well-being of employees. But one of the things we did last year, which we were trying to experiment with and innovate around, is other ways that we can help beyond what we traditionally might provide. So we launched a state benefits eligibility calculator. Now, we launched that in March last year, and since then we've seen over 6,000 employees use that service, working out if they're eligible for particular state benefits. And what we found is they've uncovered over £10 million of potentially unclaimed benefits in that time. So that's, if you think about that at an individual level, that's really material amount of money that might be able to help them in these financially pressured times, relieve some of that burden, help them as an individual, and help them in terms of the contribution they can make at work as well. So that's not where we stop, though, as an industry. We've got to continue to look at other ways that we can help relieve some of that financial pressure for individuals, and help the employers to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I think that platform is very beneficial because I didn't realize how many potential benefits I could apply for, just because I was like, well, I earn this much, I live like this, I'm not, for lack of a better term, in poverty. So I just didn't think like any of that would be applicable to me. And then to see, oh, actually, I could get this, it does relieve that pressure, as a millennial who feels, I wouldn't say stressed all the time, but yeah, I do definitely feel that pressure. So
it's complicated, right? It's a difficult system to navigate unless you're focusing on it. And you're right. I think I think there is a perception that it's for people outside of work or people that are on the lowest kind of socioeconomic tier or income, but that isn't necessarily the case. And if we can help, and if as a collective industry we can help people recognize stuff they're eligible for, that's such a leg up, we hope, and can relieve some of those pressures. Yeah, definitely. And lastly, all this means there's a key platform for financial advisors to make a difference. So can you give some insights and key actions that advisors should be considering? Sure. And look, far be it from me to tell advisors what to do. They're the experts, is their business, but maybe some reflections from some of the work we've been doing and some of the things we've been learning. I talked about, making the best of the window of getting people's attention. I talked about digital tools to do that. One thing in particular we've really found has changed in the last couple of years is the demand for video content, and in particular live content. My pet theory is this really all started in lockdown and during the pandemic. When people's consumption habits in terms of the media they consume, the information they consume, and how they consume it fundamentally has changed. And we're seeing this across all age brackets, that people are really interested in watching particularly short form video content. And if you haven't already experimented, if you're an advisor with using some of these formats, I'd really encourage you to try and see the impact that it can have. We're not looking for Hollywood standard production here. It doesn't have to be polished. Sometimes actually being a little bit less polished and rough around the edges, I think, can be a little bit more authentic. What we've been learning is the importance is less that 5-star production value. It's about being timely. It's about talking about the things that really matter to people in that moment and using language that they recognize and resonates with them. So that's one thing. I think it'd be fun to experiment with more kind of video content to seize that attention window. The other benefit of all of these digital channels that we all engage with in our lives is it gives us a much richer data set that we can turn into insight around what matters to people and how we can help them. So we're increasingly at Royal London sharing more of the data and insight that we have with advisors around individual schemes and their employees' financial health to help them be more targeted in their approach. So to bring that to life, we have our mobile app, we have our digital financial wellbeing service as well. Now, they're first and foremost about helping individuals help themselves improve that long-term financial resilience. But what we can do is we can aggregate the data that we have in terms of how they use that service on an anonymized basis to provide a scheme level or an advice business level view of the overall health of that group of individuals. And that really helps direct in a much more bespoke way the priority areas of support that advisors, businesses like ourselves, employers can go after. Now that complements the great expertise that advisors already have and the depth of understanding that they have of their clients. Maybe the last reflection I would share with you, Kimberly, is we've been having a lot of conversations recently with advisors who are reviewing their service offering. Mm-hmm. Now there's lots obviously of interest and introspection with regards to kind of the consumer duty and the obligations that places on advisors. But I think it's much more than that. A lot of advisors we're speaking to are really excited by the growth opportunity for their business with regards to corporate advice. And they're working out what their service offering needs to be to go after that, how they can provide that really high quality, broad offering, but at scale and with an effective cost to serve. So there's a few things that I've been chatting to individuals about. One of them is the extent to which they see it as their role to directly engage with the broad base of scheme members as part of their service, or whether they're looking to partner with others like ourselves to do that for them. One of the services that we offer that has really increased in demand is our ability to provide white labeled communications to advisors, coupled with some of our communications insights and consultancy to really help them cost effectively reach and communicate with more people. I think there's still more to go at in this space around how we use the combination of reach and scale that digital tools provide, digital channels provide, without losing the human touch. We know that, one of the reasons I think the video content's really powerful is you can reach lots of people on a timely basis, but it's still a person at the end of the day providing their credible expertise. And I think there's lots more ways that we can experiment, advice businesses can experiment with how they do that. It doesn't just need to be webinars or short videos. And then the other area that I'm really interested in exploring with advice businesses more is where there's an opportunity to not just be brilliant at servicing a scheme as a whole, but providing one-to-one support for individuals within that scheme on an individual advice basis. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've launched recently is what we call our retirement lifestyle and planner tool. And this is a digital guidance service that's white labeled for the advisor that they can offer to scheme members approaching retirement, encouraging them to start to think through what their individual needs are at retirement, to start to collect all of their information about their assets, liabilities, income, expenditure, and hopefully tee up an individual advice relationship that's good for the individual, helps them enjoy a better retirement, and good for the advice business in terms of diversifying their revenue as well. So there's a whole range of opportunities. I'm really excited. There's so much to go after. If you're an advice business working with providers and employers in this space to grow your business really effectively and do that great job that you do improving outcomes for clients.
Yeah, it seems like there's a plethora of opportunities out there. But thank you so much for speaking with me today, Rory. This was a really interesting conversation.
Great. Thanks. Really enjoyed it, Kimberly. Thank you.
Many thanks to Rory Marsh for sharing some great insights on the advisor workplace space and the ever-evolving landscape. And if you'd like any further resources or support to help grow your business and deliver value for your clients, visit advisor.royallondon.com/peoplepowered.